In this video, we reveal how one man's confidence in his perfect crime turned into his ultimate downfall. In the small French town of Cognac-les-Mines, most people had a quiet night of December 15th and morning of December 16th, 2020. But around 11 p.m., a woman let out a sharp, short scream that woke up two neighbors. The sound broke the usual quiet in this suburban area. Both witnesses said it happened quickly and that the cry was cut off in the middle of a statement. Remember that scream because it will be the only sound you hear from that night. At the same time, the Jubillar family's 6-year-old son later told police that his parents had been yelling at each other. Even though he couldn't remember what the fight was about, the fact that there was a fight proved what the neighbors had said. Even though the boy didn't think it was important at the time because family fights happened all the time, this would be the start of the whole investigation. What Cédric Jubillar did that night would later lead to questions. Investigators say he acted way too quietly because he didn't seem upset. It's not possible to fully reconstruct his feelings, but the case file does show that he didn't show any signs of fear. Then, in the quiet of a December night, no one knew that something was happening that would set off years of searches, investigations, and arguments. Tonight was the night when everything was set, but no one around knew how big what was about to happen was. Before we get into the full story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life crime documentaries that dive deep into the darkest and most unbelievable true stories from around the world. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss when a new case drops. Every story here reveals something new about the hidden side of human nature. And I'd really love to know, which country are you watching from? Drop it down in the comments below. It's always incredible to see how far these stories travel and connect people from every corner of the world who share the same fascination for true crime and justice. Your support truly helps keep these stories alive and remembered. Now let's get into it. After that December night, the probe turned right away to the woman whose screams had been heard. It was 1987 when Delphine Jubillar was born. As a nurse, she worked nights and took care of 2 kids at the same time. There was a home, a job, and kids in Cognac-les-Mines, where life seemed steady and calm. It looked like things were stable with this routine. It's important to note that her profile in the papers agreed with everything people close to her said about her. Delphine was able to handle the busy schedule because she was calm, independent, and well-organized. But by 2020, she had made up her mind to leave her husband. The official reasons weren't given, but her lawyers stressed that the couple planned to end their relationship on good terms. Still, there were problems at home. Different ideas about the future and daily problems were slowly building up. One of the first things that investigators looked into was how the familiar picture of Delphine and what happened next were different. The woman who was said to be responsible and loving to her kids suddenly vanished. And it was this difference that became the starting point for looking at what happened next. The cops first heard Delphine's story in the morning of December 16th. At around 7 a.m., Cédric Jubillar called the police to say that his wife hadn't been seen in several hours. He said he last saw her late the night before, but he didn't notice she wasn't there until it was very late at night. He couldn't give a specific time, but instead gave a range from 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. Cédric says that he tried to get in touch with Delphine several times before calling the police. He even sent her a message because he thought Delphine might have gone to stay with one of her close friends. Someone that friend knew him sent her a message telling her to tell Delphine she should go home. It was clear that Delphine wasn't there because the answer came right away. Cédric tried to get in touch with police several times, but didn't do so until after sunrise. He later said that he wanted to wait until morning so that she could come back by herself. For the police, that delay raised some red flags. When someone suddenly disappears, time is very important, and not telling anyone about it for several hours is, at the very least, strange. I feel like there is a big mistake in his schedule. It does bring up some important questions. The police showed up right away. They looked all over the house and garden, but there were no signs that Delphine had left during the night. Her things were still in the garage, her car was still parked, and both of her kids were asleep. Officers saw nothing in the house that made them think she was going to leave, especially not in the middle of the night or without saying anything. Early results like these make Cédric's story seem less likely to be true. This was the start of the probe. What began as a simple case of a missing person quickly grew. Cédric's call in the early morning set the stage for everything that happened after. Search operations began almost right away after he called. The area around Cagnac-les-Mines was searched by K9 units, thermal imaging equipment, drones, and ground teams. People in the area quickly came together to form search parties and offer their time. In just a few days, close to 1,000 people were searching through rough terrain with steep slopes, narrow trails, and other places that needed extra care and a thorough search. And now for the important question: could Delphine have found her way through this kind of terrain by herself at night when there was no light? In one of these hard-to-reach places, police found her personal belongings, including a knife, a phone, and pieces of clothes. None of the lights in the area were on, and the things were strewn around like someone had thrown them instead of dropping them while walking. On top of that, there were no signs that she had gone there by herself. The police said it would have been very hard to stay safe on that route at night, even with a lamp. Forensic experts looked at the information on her phone. Just over a mile from her house, the last signal came in on the morning of December 16th. The device sent data and then shut down quickly. But not because the battery was dead. It looked like someone had purposely stopped it from working. That sudden break in the signal turned out to be a very important piece of the picture. All of the things that were missing, the fact that there was no clear trail, and the strange behavior on the phone made it look like the person had not gone missing on purpose. There was a big change in the case's direction when the tech data and the way the scene was set up started to point to possible outside influence. Investigators also looked closely at the flashlight. There was no sign that it had been used, neither when she was said to have left the house nor afterward. The place where her things were found had no lights at all, and it would have been very hard to get around in the dark without some kind of light. This was more proof that the idea that she had left on her own was wrong, since the road didn't look like it would be used by someone trying to escape on their own. After a month, in January and February 2021, Delphine's phone did some strange things. Some features seemed to send out short signals on their own, without trying to connect to a network. After seeing this, detectives became worried and began to wonder if someone had hacked or accessed the phone from afar. The police called in tech experts to help them figure out what was going on. The company said that this kind of behavior could happen because of testing work. They say that deep-level device checks can set off automatic processes that cell phone companies might see as the phone turning on. Even with that answer, the investigation didn't rule out anything else. Some examples are a bug in the program, remote access, or even side effects from forensic analysis. Until more information came in, neither idea was proven nor disproved. Even though the phone didn't help find Delphine, it did help make a schedule and suggested that someone might have messed with it the night she disappeared. Detectives looked into Delphine's personal life at the same time as the tech probe. The fact that she talked to and posted pictures of herself with a man she was seeing was especially interesting. Together, they were making plans for the future, and the night before she vanished, she sent him a personal picture. Right away, his excuse was checked out. It was proven by outside sources that he had been at home. People also paid close attention to his wife. A day before she went missing, Delphine called the number that was linked to her husband's private texts several times. She also called Delphine and said they decided to put their relationship on hold until the divorce was over. But it looked like that deal was broken that very night. Even though this made things tense, there was no real link between the situation and Delphine's absence. It looked more like a disagreement between people than a crime. During the investigation, another man came to light who had been in a car accident with the Jubillar family before. Even though they had a bad relationship in the past, his participation was quickly ruled out when an eyewitness provided a strong alibi. Someone in the neighborhood said that a van had been parked next to Delphine's house for a few days. The owner was located and questioned by the government. Even though times and paths were compared, there was still no link to the case. Almost every lead had to be carefully looked into. After each other, they were fired. Lack of motivation, strong defenses, and timelines that don't match up. At the end of this phase, it was clear that none of the other people involved could give the investigation a clear path. The official case started to lose steam, and internet communities took over. A lot of big groups formed on different social media sites, mostly on Facebook, where one group had almost 8,000 members. People posted ideas, looked at the news, argued about witness statements, and talked about search efforts every day. Users tried to put the puzzle together, but since they couldn't see the real case files, most of what they did was just noise and didn't give any useful information. If we're being honest, these groups did more to confuse people than help the case, but they did keep people interested. Some of the posts that went around the internet were based on guesses, incomplete facts, or just plain wrong conclusions. That wave of false information often made it hard for cops to do their jobs. Officers had to waste time checking out false findings, and heated arguments made people have unrealistic expectations. The lawyers for Delphine's family said that spreading false information like this could hurt the investigation and put too much pressure on the family based on public opinion. Her family members also said that some of the things she did online were very bad. People on the internet were openly accusing people who had nothing to do with the case without any proof. In the end, the chatter on social media turned into a separate problem that the police had to carefully look into so that it didn't get in the way of their work. After ruling out each outside theory one by one, the investigation turned its attention to what Cédric did the night his wife disappeared. The first thing that didn't make sense was his own story about what he did when he realized Delphine was gone. His cell phone data showed that he had only taken 40 steps before the police came, but he went back almost 400 steps during a later walkthrough with detectives. That kind of difference was too big to ignore. He said he didn't want to make noise at night, but the police thought that was a strange reason to be quiet. To be honest, I have a hard time understanding that part. Delphine parked her car in a way that wasn't normal. In general, she didn't leave things like that. The fresh condensation on the windows inside the car told cops that someone had just been in it. One idea was that it had been used that night and then brought back, but Cédric said his wife had left on foot, so this didn't make sense. Another strange thing was what he told the cops right after he woke up. Investigators thought his words were too strong and came too quickly when he said something bad had happened to his wife. He changed some parts of his story from one sentence to the next. His explanation for why he called Delphine so many times and at different times was not full. His phone records showed that he called her 180 times, but none of those times were after he called for help or did a full check of the house. As strange behavior, changing facts, and tech data that didn't match the story continued, Cédric became the focus of the investigation. The police still needed stronger evidence, but it was already clear that what he did that night was a very important part of the story. By the summer of 2021, agents had run out of outside leads and were now focusing on the husband. On June 16th, Cédric was arrested and publicly named as a suspect in the crime that involved Delphine and that her body was hidden. The arrest came on quickly. Early that morning, police arrived at the house, searched it with witnesses, and then brought him inside. To be clear, the choice to arrest wasn't based on just one piece of proof. It was a combination of many pieces of evidence. At the same time that Cédric was being questioned, his new girlfriend was also being brought in. They were trying to find out if she knew anything about what happened that night, or if she knew anything about where Delphine's body might have been moved. She was freed after being questioned for a few days. No clear link to the disappearance was found, and the information she gave did not go against what was already known. The prosecution said that there wasn't just one time that made the case against Cédric. Several things came together to make it. There were differences in how he behaved on the night of the disappearance, contradictions in what he said, and technical information that didn't back his story. Researchers specifically pointed to changes in the car's location that didn't make sense, activity on Delphine's phone, and the order of events that could be pieced together from digital records as reasons to arrest him. Cédric insisted he wasn't guilty and that he had nothing to do with Delphine going missing. But police thought he was the last person to see her alive, and his story didn't make sense. At the time he was being held, the official charge against him was intentional harm that caused the death of a spouse without recovering the remains, which needed a lot of proof. The prosecutors made it clear that their case wasn't based on guesswork, but on a serious and logical set of facts that they believed pointed straight to Cédric. After Cédric was arrested, detectives started to look into his past in order to figure out how his life experiences might have affected how he acted in a high-stress situation. He grew up without constant support because he lost his parents when he was young and went from foster family to foster family. He felt deeply abandoned. People who knew him well said that he often tried to look independent, but on the inside, he was weak emotionally and needed outside approval a lot. Different people who knew him gave different accounts of who he was. Some people thought he worked hard, while others thought he was dishonest and couldn't handle stress. There were hidden imbalances in the Jubillar family. Delphine had a stable job and a bright future, but Cédric's job options were all over the place. Psychologists who looked at his personality said that he wasn't usually violent, but he did get very angry easily, usually when he felt like he had failed or when he needed his wife. Psychologists made it clear that his reactions weren't usually aggressive. They were mostly caused by his fear of losing the people who helped him and who he thought were important to who he was. And I think that this inner struggle, this mix of fear, pressure, and emotional instability, was a big part of how police understood what he did that night. As the case became more serious, the cops stepped up their work. Once the first forensic studies were done, tactical teams went back to searching the field. They went through steep ravines, caves, and tunnels that were no longer being used, the kinds of places that you need special tools to even get to. The places around Cognac-les-Mines were cleaned up again, but this time with the help of mountaineering teams and thermal imaging tools. There was nothing left to chance for the investigators. The size of the search showed how worried people were that Delphine had not been seen or heard from since those early morning hours. There were no signs that she had left on her own or been moved. Investigators saw that silence as a danger sign because it said a lot. A burned-out farm was one place that got a lot of attention. Why? Someone who shared a cell with Cédric said they heard him confess while he was in jail. Ground-penetrating radar, excavation. Tools and going through every pit and layer of dirt were used by investigators to do a full search of the area. But the search didn't turn up anything. There were no remains, DNA traces, or other signs that this place had ever been used by someone who committed a crime. These problems showed how shaky evidence from jailhouses can be. And to be honest, these kinds of prison statements often lead police to the wrong people. The police also looked into anyone who might be out to hurt the family. They looked into old fights, problems at home, problems at work, and even grudges that had been held for a long time. However, none of those lines of inquiry led to a motive or a reliable time range. All of the people involved had checked alibis, so no one could be linked to what happened that December night. Investigators tried to piece together the whole night's events by December 2022. They went over the movements of every important person again, checked phone records, looked at car routes, and looked over all the timing details again. This process helped them see the big picture of when things happened, but the key question: where was Delphine after 11 p.m.? No other idea could explain the disappearance, even after a detailed investigation, and the search area continued to turn up no solid leads. The study then moved on to cars that were linked to people close to Cédric. The first thing on the list was a friend's car. Police found small amounts of blood and a few pieces of hair inside. That led to a more thorough forensic investigation, and after testing, experts proved that the biological material belonged to the car owner and his family. The small marks were thought to be from normal use and had nothing to do with Delphine's case. That lead ended in a dead end. Still, police were looking for another possible threat, a white car that the same cellmate said Cédric had specifically named. He said that Cédric talked about a make and model that was allegedly used to move the body. Each matching car in the area was looked at by police. None of them had come across the possible crime scene. There were no suspicious lines found, and all of the owners had good excuses. This made it very hard to believe what the jailhouse report said. At the same time, DNA testing was running into big problems. Delphine did not have a reference sample because she did not have a body. That meant that any living things that were found couldn't be accurately matched. Even though lab tools could find traces, it was not possible to be sure if they were connected to the case or just part of the background. Also, it's important to note that these tests rarely show anything clear-cut without a clear reference point. Detectives also did a full technical search of the car Delphine used. The trunk, cabin, floor mats, and other internal parts were all inspected. There were no signs of a fight, the movement of heavy things, or efforts to clean up biological matter. The car's data logs showed that it wasn't used at night and that the mileage hadn't changed much, which made it even less likely that it had anything to do with her absence. There was a chain of proof that went from the blood and hair to the vehicle logs and the statements from the cellmates. While all of them called for a full study, none of them led to a clear, verifiable breakthrough. That meant that the prosecution's case was still based on a collection of vague signs rather than solid physical evidence. After Cédric was arrested, his lawyers built a case around the fact that there wasn't any direct evidence against him. 7 different motions were sent to get him released, saying that keeping him in jail for so long was no longer necessary at this point in the investigation. But each time, the court said there weren't enough reasons to change the terms of his arrest and turned down the request. His lawyers also said that the conditions in which he was being held violated his rights. They said that being alone, not being able to talk to anyone, and still being a suspect were putting too much pressure on him. These claims were part of a larger public effort that made it seem like Cédric was being held without a good reason. On the other hand, prosecutors were very against his release. They said that he had said things that were not consistent with what he was doing, that he might try to influence witnesses, and that he might try to hide information that was still being looked at. In cases this complicated, I think it's important to remember that judges don't just make choices based on facts. They also think about the risks that might happen. That makes sense, which helps explain why the court kept turning down the motions for freedom. Arguments in court went on for months. Even though both sides kept defending their views, the outcome stayed the same. Investigators kept Cédric in jail while they worked on the case. In 2023, people started looking again, this time going to places that couldn't be reached before because of steep terrain. Sadly, that attempt also failed, making it seem even more like this case had frustratingly come to a stop. As the case reached a stable but still unmoving stage, detectives made it clear where they stood. Evidence from other sources, contradictions, and Cédric's actions after Delphine went missing all led to him being involved. But because no one was ever found, investigators couldn't do important forensic tests that would have helped them prove or disprove the crime idea. Cédric has always denied doing anything wrong, and since he hasn't confessed, the case is still on hold. Delphine's family and friends and the police have not been able to fully understand what happened. To sum up, it's safe to say that the chances of a trial are still unclear. The case is based on logical conclusions rather than physical proof. This makes it very easy for the prosecution to lose if any part of the story starts to change. Thank you for watching and taking the time to dive into this case with me. Every story we explore shows just how unpredictable and dangerous the world can be and why staying aware and informed is so important. If this video kept you on the edge of your seat or gave you a new perspective, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next deep dive into real-life mysteries and crimes. Your support helps the channel grow and allows us to keep uncovering the stories that matter. I want to hear from you, so leave a comment below and share your thoughts, theories, or the next case you think I should cover. Every comment is read and considered, and your input helps shape the future of this channel. And if you know someone who would be shocked or intrigued by this case, share this video with them. Together, we can spread awareness and keep these stories alive for everyone to learn from. Stay alert, trust your instincts, and take care of yourself and those around you. Awareness and knowledge are some of the strongest tools we have in a world full of uncertainty. Thank you again for being here, for supporting the channel, and for following along with these stories. Stay safe, stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next video where we uncover another shocking truth.